yours. These, just the handhelds, I don't know what's wrong
Okay,
with them.
all right. Well, we'll just make sure that we.
No, mine, oh. Nope, I like, this one works.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, so the one that, this one is the updated one. And then you just kind of need to tell it. I had to do it. You know, well, we just add the website of Alec doing that.
Actually, I think it is, but it's kind of a
Fair
version.
yeah. They want pictures of us, I just have one.
Ready to get the meeting started?
I think so. Let me
On the email.
All right, testing. All right, we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Okay, let's do the roll call. Yeah, do I put you on the roll call, Stacy? Sure. Stacy, are you here?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
here.
All right. Tammy.
Here.
Justin.
Here.
Yvonne.
Here.
Heather.
Here.
Keenan, present. All right. All right. I would like to, I'm going to start the meeting with reports of the city council members because I know that with, we've got a lot of stuff going on right now. So, Heather, do you have anything with fire department, cemetery park, or maintenance?
We interviewed for maintenance tonight, so we've got a few more things to fine tune before we move forward with that. We gave him the due date of next Wednesday for a final decision. The fire department, as far as I know, we're all good. Still looking into the CIV grant, whatever. Still learning all that fun stuff.
Right, I got the survey that will, I got the survey in my email that will allow us to move forward with that in June, so I need to get that sent. Well, I think I have to actually fill it out, but I would love to have you in, I think it has to be the mayor. That's what I was told, but I was gonna have you and Nick look at it before it gets sent off. Is Nick here?
No, he's not here.
Okay.
He's sick.
All right.
We'll have to find out more information.
Yeah, and I will get it forwarded to you because there would be no harm in having more than one pair of eyes on it.
Right. As far as the cemetery goes, we are currently working on a grant for the cemetery as well. We're gonna meet again on the 25th to fine tune that, hopefully, and to go over what the plan is for the next year.
Okay. All right, Yvonne?
Okay, I just have, we have one water customer that needs to arrange some payment, a payment plan for them. They're not over, you know, they don't owe a lot by any means, but they do need to have some payments made arrangements for, so I will send that out and get it back, and I've explained to them how it works by they can pick their payment, and but it has to be, that amount has to be paid every month. until their balance is paid in full, but they feel like they can pay their balance in full before, too long. So that's not a real big.
Okay, do we have anything with the buildings or anything
Uh,
else on the treasury?
No, we just are renting a lot.
Okay. Justin,
Anyway,
what do you have for us today?
So I talked to Scott, kind of got an update on the water, maybe he could talk to it, but we are hitting our overflow every day, which is good. I plan on getting the software that he monitors our water tank and water system with on my computer so I can learn it and be a little more involved that way. One of the things that we talked about in a couple meetings ago was to put a meter on the overflow, so we had an exact idea of the amount of water we have coming down. I'm gonna learn the software first before we do that and see if there's a good way to estimate it without spending money for a meter. I don't know, Scott, if you wanna elaborate any more on water from there?
Well, I just had one quick little thing that maybe I just needed to kind of get the town's approval. We had two things on our water report this year that need to be resolved. They give you a point system, and if you have some things that are wrong, they take points off of your, it's like a driver's license with tickets that, you get so many tickets, they take your driver's license. It's, I guess, similar to that. That's just an easy way maybe to understand it. But we've got two issues that need to be resolved. Keenan, I gave you one of those, that letter. And then we've also got two other issues that came up just in the last 2 days. In our consumer confidence report, we need to do a little bit of paperwork on that so we don't get another ding. But what I did is I looked at it, and both of those were to do with our spring project up on the mountain, the two upper springs we redid. So I contacted Lynn Wall, and Lynn Wall's agreed to fix it. I think it was almost his job to do it to begin with, but it never did get done. I don't think it was Lynn that dropped the ball. I think it was, he turned in the paperwork, but I don't think it ever got recorded correctly. So I think these are fairly easy fixes, but in talking with Lynn, he said he'd take care of it, but I do think he's gonna charge us a little bit for it, for his time. He's with Wall Engineering, and I think that's more than fair. But I told him that I would, kind of clear that with the mayor and the council. So I don't think it's gonna be a large amount, but money well spent. I don't think there's any other way really to get it done. I'm sure Kurt knows how to do it, but Kurt can't do it for us, I don't think. But anyway, Lynn said he would be glad to do it, but just know we'll probably get a bill from him for a couple hours of work.
Okay, so that was the first issue. What was the second one?
Well, there's
Hey,
two.
can I interrupt before you move on? If
Yeah.
it's something we can do, we'll surely do it and save you whatever Lynn's gonna charge you.
Oh, well, you mean through rural water? Yeah. I think it's, what it is, Kurt, is, I don't mean to take up too much time here, but what it is it's a drinking water, protection plan on the upper two springs. That needs to be updated.
We can do that.
And I think Lynn's already probably got it done, if you wanna know the truth. And then the other thing is, we put the two top springs into service back in 2021, or 2020, excuse me. I don't think the paperwork ever got turned in correctly. And so they've dinged us 2 years in a row on that. And, but I think Lynn kind of dropped the ball maybe, or I don't think he dropped the ball, I shouldn't say that. Lynn did a good job. It's just that he notified the right people, and I think we were approved verbally, but it never got into a written form, and the state's still saying we're using water on an unapproved source. So I think that's gonna take a few phone calls to fix that.
We can't do that for you.
Okay. Well, anyway, I just wanted to let you know that that's being dealt with, but I just wanted to make sure you were okay with him charging us for a couple hours.
Right, and that note you gave me, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure it had to do with that we didn't have an emergency plan in place, or
Well,
didn't
it's
have a recent enough
It's a,
plan in place.
yeah, it's a protection plan for, you know, the Upper Two Springs. And, the last time one was done was in 2004, that just needs to be updated.
Okay, and that's something we put together as a city council?
No, Lynn Wall will do it.
Okay,
He'll do it for us, yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
Just remember, the next time those updates are due, let us know what we can do.
Okay, all right. I didn't know that. Thank you. Okay.
Okay,
Thanks, Scott. That's all I have to you.
okay, so nothing with the roads right now?
No.
Okay. All right, Tammy, what do you have? Planning and zoning.
Well, with planning and zoning, we had a couple of questions that we have, or concerns, I think, that they were wanting to do a moratorium because we have our plans that we have now, and then we have the new ones that are being done by Jones and DeMille. And they're telling us that they think they might be able to have that done by May, was it, that they said?
Yes.
And so we were wanting to do a moratorium, but I have a couple of things in regards to that Jones and DeMille thing, and one of them is Judy was researching on some of the water. There's been a big concern at the planning and zoning meeting that we have how well on that water thing that you had done, that survey, was that what it was? And how well, so if there's really, the water will be there, because there's, so was some question about looking that over and on the connections. And so Judy has researched some things and has some questions that she has, that this is why we were wanting the moratorium as well, so that we could try to answer some of these questions before Mogul, and I think that Lyle Young approached at the planning and zoning for a subdivision on houses he wants to do, and we just want to make sure that we protect the town and even the new people that will be moving in these subdivisions on the water. And so, Judy, I'm going to let you have some time to let us know what you found, and where it's kind of just raised questions that Justin might be able to help answer, Kurt might be able to help answer. But these are why we were wanting to vote on a moratorium tonight, just so that we can have some time to get this and to get the more detailed policy, zoning and planning.
Thank you. When I read the water report that we got here a few months ago, the note in it, it stated that there were 2 pressure reducing valves in the system to help prevent any blowouts of people's water, culinary water into their homes. But I'm hearing from that time to this that that's not the case. There are actually more than just the 2 that were noted in that report. And I'm concerned exactly how many do we have, and with respect to some of the drinking water and things like that that you were mentioning, Scott, we were talking about an emergency preparedness in case, God forbid, all the electronics go out up there, and how fast can things be turned off to prevent damage to people's in-home water systems, the pipes that people have, the PEX or galvanized, whatever they have that serve their drinking water. This is a question, I think, that really needs to be delved into. The protection plan that you were talking about for emergencies, absolutely. I think these are some questions that need to be more fully examined and understood.
Scott, don't we just have the 2 pressure reducing stations?
Yeah, just 2.
Okay.
Just 2?
Yeah.
Because I'm understanding when it was talked about, I thought I heard somebody say that there was one up by Palisades and one here off 89, but somebody else was saying that there was another one by their property.
Nick said that I have one up across from my house, and that's why my water pressure is so horrible.
Well, yeah, the two water, or the 2 reduction stations, one's across from Tammy's house, and the other one is up Palisade Road, about halfway up to the lake.
These others you're talking about are irrigation water.
Oh,
okay.
okay. See, I didn't know.
And as far as, correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, but pending any kind of power issues or this new electronic system goes down, those pressure reducing stations are not going to be affected. They're mechanical pressure reducing
Yeah, and
valves.
they would work regardless, and, you know, as far as the upper system, you know, we've given that a lot of thought too. There are some monitoring systems up there that wouldn't work if the power was off or whatever, but, we can control the whole system manually.
Yeah, which is what Scott used to do a year or so ago. Up until a year or so ago, it was all done manually. So essentially what would happen is if this software goes down, Scott will know, because
Yeah.
Zap's not working,
Sends me a text immediately.
and then he'll go up and start checking it manually again.
Okay, I just kept hearing all these different sources and I just didn't know for sure. And,
Well, every house has a pressure reducer on it when it comes in your house also.
oh, okay,
So your house shouldn't shoot up no matter what the main is doing.
that's good to know. See,
But-
this was a question that I
My
didn't
old
know the
house
answer.
didn't.
That might not be entirely true, Zeb, I mean,
Well, yeah, I mean,
on any new construction, and I don't know how far back, I don't know when they started that, when that rule came into play that everybody had to have it. But for older homes, it's up to the homeowner to get that put on.
Okay.
So in other words, the house that we live in that was built in 1947.
You probably don't have one.
Thank you.
Judy, I didn't even know that we had to put one in ours.
So the question also is about the moratorium though. So that's what we need to decide, because the planning and zoning really wanted a moratorium to just kind of have it on hold so we didn't have something in the middle of being built and have the new plans take over if they were so close to coming into effect. And so that was something I was, said that I would bring up at the council meeting to discuss and see if we could, what people, everybody thought.
Gotcha, and we do have it on the agenda. I can't remember what the name of it is. Okay, what else did you have, Tammy? I think you brought up one or two other things.
We voted, and on taking away the buffer zone. And I have since found out some information that makes me wonder if that was really a good idea. We didn't do the whole protocol that we should, that's actually a zone change. So we do have to do a public hearing and everything like that. But I have asked Scott, also to come and discuss just pros and cons for everybody to kind of hear, so that we can kind of try to make a decision if that's something we really want to do, the good and the bad and the ugly or whatever that might happen with that. So Scott, I'll give you some time now to kind of tell what you were saying about that and some of the, I guess something happened several years ago that would affect us if we did not have it.
Okay, just to give you all just a quick really update. I was hired at the county 14 years ago as part-time, well, not part-time, but half zoning for the county and half building inspection. And I haven't been doing zoning now for the last 4 years. I did it for 10 years in the zoning department for the county. Pretty much covered. I was the only one in the zoning department. So, part of this is hopefully at least you'll feel comfortable enough to ask me questions, because I'm not the official zoning guy anymore. Okay? And I'm going to present to you what I saw when I was zoning administrator in buffer zones, good, bad, and at least so you can understand how the county ordinance falls into buffer zones. Okay? Right now, Sterling Town has a buffer zone of, there's 2 buffer zones. The first half mile is half-acre zoning. The second half a mile out to a mile distance is 1-acre zoning. Okay? I don't know how many have seen maps of that. So pass these around and kind of take a look at that. If you look at the buffer zone area for Sterling Town, it's probably 6 to 8 times larger acreage than the town of Sterling is. It's huge. Okay. Now, when this ordinance, or when the buffer zone was put into the county ordinance and the county mapping was back in the late 90s, basically when they redid zoning, they redid maps, they had a committee that they dealt with throughout the whole county, a committee of individuals that put that all together, they asked for input from the town, cities, how big a buffer zone you would like. That's where the zones came from originally, back in the late 90s, okay? I think on earlier maps, there was buffer zones that existed on earlier mapping and zoning prior to that. But what we have right now was adopted basically in the late 90s. It had a couple little modifications to it on that map. There's a little modification in zoning that's happened on the business commercial zone that's out by the old Palisade Lodge out here on the highway, Palisade building that was actually where the water slide is down west. There's a little bit of change there. There was an addition to the buffer zone for Dan Davis down in the creek bottom area. I think that's the only two changes that's really happened around Sterling Town. Now, within that, you have to understand that if you do away with the buffer zone around the town, any which way, the town now has zero say as a town or a planning commission or a council to the county for recommendations for where roads should be or potential roads should be. We want potential roads, we need easements for this, that, and other things. The county then ordinance takes precedence when there's no buffer zone and anything can come right, be developed, built, put in right up to your city boundary without any input, unless the city council member or somebody from the city wants to go to that planning meeting or county commission meeting to address something. But there's no pre-information or pre-knowledge given to the town without that. Yeah, Justin.
So can you clarify, because I didn't think we had any control over the buffer zone as it is. Do we have control about where the roads are?
You don't have control, you have input directives that you can do.
Meaning they have to come and
Meaning, when I was doing it, and I'm not gonna speak for how it's being done directly exactly right now, but the basic directive is, if there's development in the buffer zone, there is a form that was used, that I used, it's still there, and I believe it's still used. It should, every developer in any type of commercial development, construction type things, would all come to the city, a representative of the city, to review that and sign that off and be aware of what is going into the buffer zone. You can use different ways to assess and look at that. You can do it as a planning commission, you can do it as a council, or you can assign an individual to do that, or however you want to do that. But it would be, you could look at it and say, well, where they want to build this is where we have to have a future road, if you have a road group plan. That's over our easement area for our water line extension that has to go here or there. Different things like that. You also, so that's really your inputs. They're inputs but not control. That make sense?
Yeah.
Okay? Now, if you don't have it, if someone wants to build again in the outside city limits with no buffer zone, that form, that information is never going to come to the town to be looked at. That make sense?
We've had no rules or necessarily a road plan that we could go back to the county and say, look, this is what we have.
Correct.
We need this. So we've had no grounds to move
You
forward.
probably haven't felt like you had any say in it because you didn't have a plan.
Exactly.
And so it does take a plan of some sort to be able to really give beneficial input directives to that, okay? So, on the other part of it is if you don't have a buffer zone, there are businesses, there are things that can come up and build and go into which would be, if you did away with the buffer zone, you're gonna roll to a 5-acre zone, which is standard agriculture in the county, and I'll explain all of those in just a second. You won't, they could put anything right up next to the town limit. Some of those items out of the ordinance says you could have a slaughterhouse, a commercial feedlot built right next to city limit. Okay? If you don't have a buffer zone, the buffer zone is going to limit some of those things. Some of those things would be conditional use permits through the county, but it's gonna get noticed. How does the city feel about that as a potential directive? Okay, and the slaughterhouse is not gonna be able to be built in buffer zone. It's an A zone item only, with a conditional use permit. So if you didn't have the buffer zone, you'll have A zone, agricultural zone. A slaughterhouse is gonna, potentially could come in, they're gonna go to a conditional use permit through the county planning commission, but you potentially would only, the only say you would have in that is if you attend that county planning commission meeting as an individual, as a city representative. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Oh, can I pause you real quick?
Sure.
So that form that you talked about, I guess it's kind of an approval form. Is that the same form that you dealt with, Zeb, or is this something, okay?
Yeah.
I
And then
think
how would
it's a
we?
standard form. I don't think anything's changed on it since I have not been doing zoning the last 4 years.
Yeah, and it just states that we've seen what they're presenting.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and that goes back to you, whoever's reviewing it, to potentially bring it to a planning and zoning meeting for information, or, you know,
And that would be,
whatever.
that would be nice on our side of it, that maybe we could, when it was presented to the county, we could be involved before the homeowner is at our meeting saying,
It's done.
Sure.
does that make sense?
Sure, it does. Okay, so Spring City is very sticky on what they do with the buffer zone form. They require that individual to come to the planning and zoning meeting and present, not just give you the form to sign off. That's what Spring City.
And we've been having them come to our meeting, but I'm saying as far as the county end of it, if we could be more involved with the county, if there'd be a little more talking back and forth there.
I absolutely agree with you. I tried to do that a lot more than what I think it happens now.
Cause yeah, we never see anything until the homeowner's here with it.
Right.
And by then, you're already 5 steps behind at the county level.
But there shouldn't be any approvals happening at the county level until the city signs
Yeah,
off.
no, I agree, but yeah, it'd just be
But
nice
you're
to
right,
have
you're right, there should be some more communication. It's a tough position as a zoning administrator, trying to figure out all the communication places that have to happen.
Exactly, and I understand.
You know, it's kind of the beast.
So with that form and that process, does the town have any ability to say no to something in buffer zone?
No. Not if it's allowed by county ordinance and in that zone, you potentially can't say no. You could say no, but that no is gonna go at least be presented to the county planning and zoning commission that this was their feeling and input on it. You can put that type of input on it, but it's not gonna necessarily guarantee that it won't happen.
But a conditional use permit, if I understand, has to have more input as far as commercial with the buffer zone than without, because of what happened with that rock.
Correct. So, some of you remember the gravel pit discussion down on the hill west of town here, okay? I mean, I'm very aware of it. I grew up down there. That was my dad's farm. Okay, but, so I have a lot of investment in Sterling because I know most of you. And I've dealt with most of you for 40, 50 years, okay? Those who've been here that long, okay? But it was conditional use. What's that?
You're just a kid.
I'm just a kid. Only just a couple of years younger than you are. So, yeah. The gravel pit fell into the buffer zone. It required a conditional use permit. Okay? And there was a lot of discussion of different things, whether it was grandfathered, where it wasn't, and all of those things. But it really came down to, I really pushed it back to the city to be involved in that, or the town, to be involved in those things because it affected the town, because they really wanted to use Center Street as their access road. That was the big problem, I think, in it all. Okay? Eventually, through that whole process, at least with the conditional use permit and a input to Sterling Town, knowing about it coming to the Planning Commission on the county level, you could have some input and at least come to the meetings for discussions about concerns. So I guess that's what I'm saying. Part of it, not only filling out the form, but if you've really got something that you feel strongly against, you need to show up to the county planning and zoning meeting. Somebody does.
representing the town.
I'd like to add to what you said. I think I've talked to Zeb about this before and a couple other people, but before I moved here, I lived in Colville, and we were up, we were in the same county as Park City, and Park City kept pushing Colville to expand. And they wouldn't expand, and they refused to put together a plan on what we were gonna do or why we wouldn't expand. And we did have a buffer zone, but what the county ended up doing is on the very, as soon as they hit the end of the buffer zone, they built 200, I think, $4 million houses. And that was when the city came forward, Colville came forward and said, look, we can't support this water-wise, we can't support this wise, and they said, at this point, it's your problem because you didn't give us a plan. If you would have told us about this beforehand, then we would have worked with you, but as you refused to talk to us, now it's your issue. And,
That's generally what happens.
Yeah, I know that some people are like really opposed to having a plan, like, well, I don't want to see this expand and stuff. We need to be able to work with the county on this.
Yeah,
Like you're saying, if we do not have a plan in place, if we cannot say this is why we don't think building that is a good reason, then it's just whatever the county decides. And does it really make that big of a difference if it's in Sterling or 2 feet outside of Sterling?
Maybe, yeah. Okay, so the options, and Tammy and I talked about this, the options, if you do away with the buffer zones that exist as they are, 1/2 acre and 1 acre, and you want to go to 5 acre zone, that 5 acre zone in county ordinance is agricultural zone. It's pretty open to a lot of things. And I know there was discussions about, well, we want a 5 acre buffer zone to create, and that's creating a new zone if you try to impose regulation on the different than what's in county ordinance right now on 5 acre. Okay, so that's not going to happen because you would have to take the county ordinance and implement a new zone into the whole ordinance. It's going to be a big job to do. Okay, so I look at this, and here's my recommendation. I'm just an individual. I'm not county zoning on any of this. But my thoughts when I talk to Tammy on this, I look at this buffer zone. It goes west, over the hill, down past the county road in the valley on my dad's old farm. It goes down in the middle of those fields, the furthest buffer zone that way. It goes north clear to the turn of where Thule's home is. Out there, it goes that far, and it goes clear up to Palisade Lake on the east. And it goes south basically almost to about the spring above the reservoir. So, Spring City, when they adopted it, Kurt, 8 years ago probably, 7, 8 years ago, when they adopted this buffer zone, they went with 1 acre for the first 1/2 mile. Moroni, when they put it in, back in the early 90s when they did it, they only went 3 blocks, 1 acre zone around their town. It's not required to be a full 1/2 mile, 1/2 acre, full another 1/2 mile, 1 acre. That was the recommendation generally. Most towns at that point had no clue what that really meant. They just said, yeah, we're good with that. Okay? It may have been good then. But to me, I would tend to think more Sterling Town. If they really want to change something, retain a buffer zone and drop it down to a smaller distance around town that you want to see, that you really feel like you can do planning in and further development in.
And make it 1 acre parcels instead of 1/2 acre.
Sure.
We don't have to keep the 1/2 acre, right?
That's correct. You do not have to keep the 1/2 acre.
In the buffer zone.
You can drop to you can go to just the 1 acre buffer zone, okay?
And what's the process to change the buffer zone if that's what we want to do?
Okay, so what you need to do is you would generally, as Tammy was saying, you would have to have a public hearing on it. I'm assuming probably through the planning commission. This can be based on your own ordinances, what your ordinances say to have zone changes. Because it's a zone change recommendation. It's not an official thing, even though you're going to vote on it and have a public hearing on it. It's to get the word out there. That's what it's about. You have to let people know, even if they're outside of town and you wanna take it, the buffer zone off of their property and roll it, you're gonna have to go through the public hearing process. It doesn't mean it ends here. No matter what type of response you get here, you can still, as a town council, forward that to the county planning and zoning, okay? So someone from the council would need to be assigned to take that to the planning and zoning. Does that make sense? As far as your recommendation of what you want to do with buffer zone. After you do, part of that is, it's gonna fall into discussions all, and just like you have here in the county side of it, did we meet the processes? Did we have our public hearings? You know, did you guys have discussions within the town about, you know, those things?
And then also the plan that Jones and DeMille is doing would still adhere to this same thing. It would just avoid this half-acre parcels of subdivisions that come in and pretty easy and take over.
Could, yeah. You know, you're gonna have to be careful of how you address it and look at it, because you may be changing something that somebody may say, well, that affects my property and the value of my property. In one way or another. Is it more valuable at 1 acre? Is it more valuable at half acre? Is it more valuable, you know, some things you're gonna have to, you know, work through. Okay?
And we will already have to have a hearing on that with what Mike is working on as of now,
Yeah.
with all of our zoning and everything. So we will be doing a hearing on that regardless.
So you need to do a hearing, and even to, you know, do what it sounded like you maybe tried to go through. I think you're gonna have to really, to do away with it, so be it. That's what you wanna do, that's, you know, that's you guys' choice. But like I say, I would recommend, if you wanna do something initially, drop it down to 1 acre zoning, a lot smaller distance. It feels more comfortable. When you look at the zoning map, I'd also address, there's some business commercial zone going up Palisade Road as soon as you hit the city limit, going up Palisade Road, which is only a couple blocks up past that highway there. It turns to a county business commercial zone. I think that was probably put in back when they were doing mapping, when there was a restaurant up there. Some probably remember a restaurant up there on the side of the road. That one. I'm not really sure why otherwise it's there, but it might be a consideration. You may want to just take that out. And be part of your proposal to do that. So get the map, look at what's there, address those types of zones. Does that make sense? And put your recommendation out there. You know, put it out to your people here in your public hearings. Even if there's confrontation, then you can still forward it to the county if the council is in favor of it. Okay? Spring City initially did theirs about 15 years ago. Their first recommendation of planning commission, or the buffer zones, they assigned a council member to take it. He and his buddy on the back row didn't want it. And he said, I'll take it, and it never went anywhere. It got buried. Okay? So, and that happens. Anyway. Any other questions on buffer zone? Anybody?
That's very informative, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Scott, appreciate that.
All right, Tammy, did you have anything else?
I don't know if we wanna discuss on that moratorium, or if you wanna wait till the end, or I don't.
Well, I would like to, I know that I'd like to hear from Zeb on if he's, you know you're over the planning and zoning and stuff, but Zeb, do you have anything that wasn't brought up, or?
That was just Mike's recommendation, is where
Okay.
it would put you in two separate set of rules.
All right.
And
Two separate set of rules, meaning we're developing new ones and we have old ones and it just gets messy. Because as far as the water's concerned right now, for a few houses, I'm not concerned. I don't think Scott is too concerned either, but as far as the zoning, it would be really messy. Because we would have to try to interpret our old stuff, and where does the new stuff, when does it start to apply? It would be a disaster.
well, and according to our rules, with what these guys are presenting, we're gonna require a road be put in. But where we're drawing up new road maps, it's also gonna be tough to require them a road and then say our maps come back and we put the road in the wrong spot for what our new maps are wanting.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, it kind of puts these guys in a bad spot, but I don't know what to do there.
Right.
You have to.
Yeah, it's a tough place to be in because I think in that process, I dealt with it in the county and changing zoning, ordinance changes. You really can't impose it on anybody else until you have fully adopted it as a town. Then you can enforce it and recognize those things that are in that ordinance. So it may not be as messy as it maybe sounds, because if somebody starts an application, you basically have to take them through as what the present zoning ordinance is. You can't inflict upon them the new ordinance partway through it.
Yeah.
Okay?
And if I could, Mayor,
Yes, sir.
and maybe you've done this, I don't know the answer to it, but I think my mind is telling me that I question it enough that I'm gonna just mention it. Before you adopt a moratorium based on a zoning change, I would double check that with an attorney to make sure that that's a legal reason to adopt a moratorium, because I'm not sure that it is.
Okay, I did have the opportunity to meet with some mayors back in January, and one of the topics we got brought up was like with Jones and DeMille, like the new policies and procedures. I know that all of them in the San Pete ones, I think I talked to Manti and possibly Centerville. And my brain is not here. Oh my god. Okay. But they told me that was what, they had done in the past or things like that. If you are concerned about that though, Tammy, do you know if you?
Well, I've talked with Jones and DeMille that has the legislature and on the legal side, and then we did mention something with McKiff, but as long as we were actively already working on the planning and zoning new rules and updating them and getting bigger and better, so it's just we're updating our rules, we're making sure they go to code, because some of them ours are outdated with Utah code. That as long as we are actively working on that, we have to do it within 6 months, and every month we have to give a report on how it is and how it's working and where we're at. And Jones and DeMille is really thinking that if we start with our public hearing, we're doing one on the 22nd with an open house, trying to get input, and then we want to do a public hearing 2 weeks after that. They could have it done by May, so we're trying to get it done before the 6 months, so it's not dragged out the whole 6 months. But we would really like to get these updated planning and zoning rules to where they're more with Utah code, and that was our main thing. Not necessarily just like telling them, no, we don't want your thing. It's just we want to just have them all updated, have them all to Utah code, and then go forward. And that was a moratorium. The maximum we can do is a 6 month.
Okay, so probably where the issue of it legally is just someone saying, we want a moratorium when they're not actually working on zoning, planning and zoning changes.
Yeah, moratorium's only good for 6 months, that's.
And we could just do it for less, but as long as they're in the process, they're working on it,
I think if legal counsel's giving you some backing in it.
Right, and, Jones and DeMille has done this with several.
They're doing the counties now too.
Yeah, they are pretty aware of the,
They just told us to be really careful and to make sure we updated every meeting and we kept it up, and that we can always end it sooner than the 6 month.
Well, they're doing some stuff for the county, but there's not been a moratorium put on the county level on.
No, I realize that. No, that is us, because our rules we have some that are outdated as far as Utah code goes. And that's why we were in the process of updating them, and that's what they're doing. And that is why the planning and zoning was saying we really need to do a moratorium, so that we have one set of rules we're going on and it's updated, and it's going forward. They're in the middle of town, we can basically kind of address where the roads are gonna be, but it's just all of the Utah code that we're not all completely in line with as of now.
I think it's my opinion that one of the main reasons to do a moratorium, and I'm not saying we should or shouldn't, but I think for a developer, it's gonna be a whole lot easier to interpret how to develop when this zoning planning stuff is finished. It's gonna be a mess if you try to do it before, I'll tell you that right now, to try to interpret all this old code and what it really means. I mean, we've seen that already, we've been seeing it. That's just my opinion.
Well, and like Zeb said, if they start building before we do it, you know, are we holding up the plans because all of a sudden where we decided we want a road, all of a sudden we go, oh, well, that doesn't work anymore. We're building here, we've gotta do this, and then it can hold up the, you know, the planning and zoning end of this as well.
Oh, or it might force what we need to get done first. I mean, if we have a road proposed, we probably need to be forced to do our road plan first to make sure it makes sense. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, and like Tammy said, we could always end it early as well. Gideon.
Yeah.
Sorry, was there any other questions on that? Mine went somewhere else.
When it gets to be my turn on the agenda, I'm gonna address some of this stuff a little bit, but I'll wait till then.
So should we just wait till towards the end then and let him do his thing on this, and then just think about the moratoriums, everything?
We might.
That's a good idea.
I think that probably hearing what everyone has to say on this and then
Okay.
looking at the moratorium at the end would probably be good, because we probably have more information we haven't considered.
Get a good look at the whole picture. Huh? Get a good look at the whole picture.
Mm-hmm.
Gideon, do you mind if I bug you? Normally we've got Nick here, but I'm wondering if there's anything about the fire station that you're aware of that we aren't.
Not that I'm aware of right now. I think everything's going good. We've got the refresher class coming up on the 21st in Gunnison for wildland, but other than that, I think we're looking good.
Okay. Do you know if we've got any extra volunteers come in, or is that still a big issue we're looking at?
Heather's probably the newest.
Well, and I got 2 more coming too, so.
That is awesome. Cool.
That's it.
So, Keenan, I had something, I just realized when Mike walked in, so, actually, I think Stacy might have forgot to put him on the agenda. But
Yeah, when I seen him walk in, I
he
realized
asked,
around the last
actually,
meeting.
like an hour after last meeting, so he should be the very first one on the agenda. But anyways, just
do what you're
But
doing.
it doesn't require action, you're just doing trading information, so
Yeah.
really you could
Right.
take care of it.
should we just have him go first?
Yes, can you remind me of your name? I'm terrible with names. I was here last time you talked about it. I know exactly what you're talking about. But I'm bad with names and faces, and I'm trying to get better.
Michael.
I'm Mike Otten, and I'm here just to request a culinary water hookup certificate for that land that Dad traded for the water tank is.
Did you ever find anything on it though?
Well, that letter I showed you the last time we were here, all of you looked at it.
Doesn't that involve the house that your dad built?
Well, let me explain.
Yeah,
Mike, would you go to the
yeah.
He got 2 water certificates from Abbott in like 1990 or some darn thing. Anyway, I found when I researched that he sold one of those to Pete Conor. So that one was gone, and he used one on his house. And then when the city built the new water tank, they traded one culinary water hookup for the ground where they built the water tank.
And that was the
We have
document
that.
you showed us last time, and we have that record.
So there is only one that's in question. The other 2, he has used, or he sold one and he used one for his house. So there's only the one culinary water hookup that I would like a certificate for. or just put it in my name and we will,
Okay, so what you're saying about the two certificates he gave, are they irrigation certificates?
No, they're culinary.
They're
So
culinary?
they were called.
I mean,
Can
culinary,
can
and they want
can I interject here?
Yes, please.
Do you care, Mike, if I interject here?
Okay.
I'm on your side. In 1980, when the town bought 87 gallons a minute of water from Avard
I've got all those certificates, I've got all
to do with
that.
the two top springs that were just redeveloped, the town gave Avard 2 water connections in exchange for bringing the pipeline down through his property. Max ended up with those, he sold one to Pete and he used one to build his house. So that's the end of those 2 connections.
And we verified that with the date.
Well,
So the
and
date
so
for
all
this
Mike's
house-
talking about here is then in 2001 or 2000, when we built the top water tank, the town gave Max another connection to, in exchange for the right to build the water tank on his property. That's the water connection that hasn't been used yet. That's the water connection that Mike is wanting to, I don't know about I've never known of us giving water certificates or anything like that, but he obviously wants something that shows that the town acknowledges that he owns that water connection. And it's just as simple as that. That's all there is to it. They own one more water connection. There's absolutely no question about it. And he gave you the document.
Yeah, I've got that.
Last month or 2 months ago or whenever it was that I was here last, and that, I don't know why there would be any more question about it.
Do we have any documentation on the other two that you were talking about though?
We don't really, but we did verify that the date of the hookup to this house was well before this other document.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
whatever happened, he was already hooked up and given
Well,
water.
I've got a letter at home stating he sold one to Pete. So those 2 that he got from Avard, there's no question.
Yeah.
Just the one where he traded the acre of ground up there for the water
Right,
tanks.
well, and that's on that deed,
Yeah.
that deed or whatever you call it.
So Max's estate owns one more water connection. That's never been used, never been put in. It's just as simple as that.
So that would come off of our number that we have of what we have available for new construction, right?
Yep.
And does that survey that they did or whatever account for a couple of the houses like Max's house and that are empty, that have not been used for a few years? Would it account for those? Because we have one that hasn't had a resident in it, we've done major remodeling, and then Max is out.
I also have my lot over here had a
So
water.
that's 3 so
Yeah,
far.
there's several meters that are not flowing water right now.
And is that accounting for the
Meter?
extra 9 on that?
There's meters set that are not flowing water. that are not-
Oh, right, yeah, there's quite a few.
Do we have to account for those in that survey or whatever that we did in the
Yeah.
9 to
Yeah,
13 that we
I
can
think
use?
so.
Do they have to come out of that 9?
Yeah,
13?
and this is obviously a side conversation. It's my opinion that we need to give you some kind of signed document. I'm not sure exactly what we need to give you, but I think we need to make sure that it's known. I mean, the certificate you have is very clear, but it was in your dad's name. So
Yeah.
whatever we need to do to transfer that to your name, I think that's completely fine.
If you could give me some kind of certificate.
A
What
deed or what?
Written document or
Written
something.
document, something.
Yeah.
What does the city sell my water hookup for? What is the city's fee?
I don't.
Does Scotty, do you know that information off the top of your head?
You mean,
Or what?
what are you talking?
For connection, for.
The connection fee,
The
what is the
connection?
connection fee?
So is that like how far away it is and stuff, that have impact fees or what?
Fee or impact fee.
Isn't it 2,500?
I think it's 26.
It's,
I don't know if this has been changed since I was in office or not, but I think it's something like $2,640. That includes the impact fee. That's the impact fee plus the connection fee. Connection fee runs in my mind was established at something like $1,040 and the impact fee was $1,600. Now, let me just, and I don't wanna take a bunch of time, but let me just explain so you all understand the law with regard to connection fees. You can only charge for a connection fee. I'm not talking the impact fee, the connection fee. It's two separate things. You can only charge what the connection costs in labor, materials, and so forth. That's the law. It's had been changed clear back in 1995. The legislature adopted new legislation, and a connection fee can only be what it actually costs. Now, when we established that fee of something like $1,040 or whatever it was, I'm trying to remember.
This says in October of 17, the connection fee for all new water connection to the culinary water system is $1,725.
And that was the last time, we haven't changed it since we done it the last time, Kurt.
I think that must have been after I got out.
Okay, so the 1,040 you're talking about?
Well, was you talking about a connection fee or an impact fee there?
This is just connection. So let's see.
That's to dig that's
Yeah.
to dig and put the meter in.
If I were you as a council, if I were you, I would establish, based on current costs, what stuff is actually costing. Or else redo your resolution, connection fee ordinance, and have it say that a connection fee is whatever it costs. You don't, without establishing or without setting an actual dollar amount. I've prepared several ordinances for towns around the state that says that very thing. That way you don't have to worry about whether or not you're charging too much or too little. You just simply add up all of the costs involved in making the connection, and that's what they pay, plus the impact fee.
So here's a note that's signed by you. In 2000, the connection fee for a particular property was $1,060 at the time, not this $1,725, because that was in 2000. And the impact fee was $1,600.
Okay, 1,060 instead of 1,040. That was only off $20. That ain't bad.
Yeah, the impact fee was $1,600.
Yeah. And I don't know how long it's been since you've had
And
the
I think
impact
we've
fee.
just done connection fees, because doesn't impact fees take a study?
Yes, you need to have
establish.
an engineering firm do a study of an impact fee to see if
Yeah.
it's time to up that.
Up it.
And honestly, if you haven't had that done since it was done in the